Hello, I'm Eric Connor from Colorado State University Global Campus, and the class is Dynamics of Power in Organizations. Today we're going to talk about Bobby Knight's unethical influence tactics. Our presentation outline will begin with a brief overview of Bobby Knight and the Bobby Knight's use of unethical influence tactics. In addition, an analysis of the relation between Bobby Knight's influence tactics, leadership strategy, and the use of power will be conducted. The presentation will conclude with the outcomes of Bobby Knight's use of power and leadership, as well as how I would have led differently in this situation. Here's an overview of Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight is regarded as one of the most successful coaches in all of sports. He won 3 national championships with the University of Indiana, including an Olympic gold medal in 1984. Despite all these successes, Bobby Knight was a controversial coach that was known to be demanding and intimidating, including verbally and sometimes physically abusive to players. One influence tactic that Bobby Knight routinely used was impression management, which is the motivation and use of behaviors to control how others perceive you. Bobby Knight utilized impression management to maintain control of the basketball team without interference from others. He was perceived as being intimidating, humiliating, demeaning, and insulting to player and media personnel. He would often verbally attack them in practices and in press conferences. Intimidation behaviors really just create fear in others so that they are influenced to do what you want, as this was helped to maintain control over his basketball team. Bobby Knight also used upward appeal as an influence tactic. Upward appeal is persuading a person to follow a request based on approval from a person in a higher authority position in the organization. In Bobby Knight's case, this can be seen by not getting any resistance from leaders of the University of Indiana in terms of his influence tactics that he was utilizing. In essence, this helped to reinforce the use of his intimidation behaviors. And Abbott in 2018 further concluded that this helped actually propel Bobby Knight into one of the most powerful figures in the state of Indiana. Still another influence tactic utilized by Bobby Knight was assertiveness. Assertiveness can involve the use of demands, intimidation, or threats to get compliance of a request. Assertiveness was seen in through the verbal abuse that was given to players and to the media. Bobby Knight's assertiveness was also seen through an incident in which physical abuse was applied to one of Bobby Knight's players, Neil Reed. In 2000, a video clip of a University of Indiana basketball practice showed Bobby Knight grab and hold the neck of Neil Reed after a play was stopped. After the incident aired on national television, other players spoke of similar encounters with Bobby Knight. In utilizing French and Raven's 1958 work on the 5 forms of power, Bobby Knight exemplified 3 of those uses of power: legitimate power, expert, and coercive power. Bobby Knight's use of legitimate power really comes from his position as coach and the relationship from coach to player. Expert power can be highly influential for an organization's success, and Bobby Knight is regarded as a very highly intelligent coach, considered by many to be an expert in his field. Along with expert power, coercive power is an equally dominant power source for Bobby Knight. Coercive power can be seen in many different facets of his coaching style. First of all, his public scolding of media and players, intimidation tactics, and an incident with player Neil Reed are all examples of coercive power. An article by Kovach asserts that under the right circumstances, coercive power could be very effective, such as in military scenarios. However, for most people, it does not work. Kovach goes on to say that often this power reduces an organization's success. After the video at the University of Indiana basketball practice surfaced in 2000, the president of the University of Indiana, Miles Brand, appointed 2 board of director members to perform an investigation on the incident. President Brand would later relieve Bobby Knight of his duties. Neil Reed would receive death threats following the firing of Bobby Knight. He later relocated to California, where he lived until his passing at age 36. In looking at what would have been done differently if I had been in that situation, I need to start with his autocratic leadership style, which gave little autonomy to players. I would shift away from autocratic leadership and incorporate more of a democratic leadership style. In this democratic leadership style, players would have more autonomy and empowerment, which studies have shown leads to an increase in satisfaction and motivation. I would also utilize more of a transformational leadership rather than Bobby Knight's transactional leadership approach based on reward and punishment. A study by Busey and Czarniecki showed that among 16 to 18-year-old soccer players, transactional coaches produce lower levels of autonomous motivation in their players compared to transformational coaches. These transformational coaches are really able to identify with the players on a more personal level, increasing motivation and satisfaction. In addition, I would not incorporate coercive power as a dominant source like Bobby Knight did. I would instead replace coercive power with reward power. According to Kovacs, reward power and coercive power are the counterparts of each other. While coercive power involves giving a punishment, reward is giving something positive of value or removing something of negative value. Reward power is highly influential and creates a motivated workforce. What Bobby Knight did was to create a culture based on fear and punishment, and I would instead make one on positivity and support. In regards to the Neil Reed incident, physical contact between coach and player should never occur. Neil Reed's incident stemmed from the abuse of power and reluctance from anyone to question the use of Bobby Knight's power. Research has shown that high-performance cultures are not based on fear and punishment, but instead have distinguishable characteristics such as the identification of clear roles, responsibilities, and what constitutes success, as well as transparent communication, teamwork and collaboration, and learning from successes and mistakes. What these attributes of high-performance cultures do for athletes is provide them with a healthy environment where growth can easily occur. In an article by Ishak, he provides 7 strategies of what coaches can do to encourage autonomy and provide a supportive environment. This is to provide a choice within boundaries, provide a rationale for task, acknowledge feelings and input, provide opportunities for athletes to take initiative, avoid controlling statements, and reduce ego involvement. This leads to athletes being proactive in their development with greater satisfaction and intrinsic motivation. In conclusion, despite great success in coaching, the use of intimidation, creating a culture of punishment and fear, as well as the incident involving Neil Reed continue to have an impact on Bobby Knight's legacy. Bobby Knight's abuse of power would eventually lead to removal as basketball coach at the University of Indiana. Although having good qualities as a leader, such as expert knowledge, Bobby Knight's abuse of power serves an example of how not to be a great leader.